fire up some mellow Carpenter's music, hit play on some zany monkey videos, and pour yourself a martini glass full of jelly beans, because on this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Ghost Rider. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today for another movie in our March Madness of Ghost Rider. We're talking about Ghost Rider, and joining me today is Justin Baker. How are you, Justin?
Good, Laramy. Glad to be back here. Let's just try not to step on Karen today.
Yeah. Are you really glad? I mean, you're watching what some people think is one of the worst comic book movies. I mean, we'll talk about our feelings, but most people go into Ghost Rider just already, oh, it's so bad.
Well,
but
I will go ahead and tell you I am not one of those people.
Okay. Well, it'll be fun to hear your thoughts as we go along this. So, were you familiar with Ghost Rider as a comic character before seeing this movie?
I remember Ghost Rider from the 90s cartoons. I can't remember exactly. I feel like he was in the X-Men cartoons.
No, he's in a flash of one of the X-Men cartoons. So last week we actually talked about that, about his appearance in the 90s cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
He made one appearance in the Fantastic Four cartoon in the 90s, and then he made one appearance in the Incredible Hulk animated series from the 90s. But he only did one episode of each. And then, like I said, he was in an X-Men episode, but it's just, there's like a bunch of things happening, and it's just like, oh, look, there's Ghost Rider, and then that's it. Like, you don't see him again.
Yeah, I seem to remember the one where he went against the Hulk, and I just remember
the Incredible Hulk one. Yeah,
who is that? You know, the guy in a leather jacket with a skull for a head. You know, he just seemed like the most awesome person there was. You know, growing up.
And I mean, you can go back and listen to the Ghost Rider in animation. We're of course recording this before that episode was released, so Justin hasn't heard it. But if you go back and listen to that episode, you'll hear us talk about, they never say his name's Johnny Blaze, and there's a lot about that episode that makes me believe it's actually Danny Ketch, which we'll talk a little bit more. If you don't know who Danny Ketch is, we'll talk about him some more in this episode. Because I think this movie also plays on the Danny Ketch story more than it does the Johnny Blaze story. But this movie was directed by Mark Steven Johnson. Now, there's some highs and lows with Mr. Johnson here. He wrote both of the Grumpy Old Men movies.
Really?
I love those movies.
Those are very good movies.
Absolutely love those movies. However, he also wrote Jack Frost, the one with Michael Keaton.
Oof. Yeah, that's pretty
this
low.
Heartfelt story with a family and just making it creepy as anything. Now, he's also wrote and directed a few other movies. So let's go through this list. You may not have known this one unless you saw it on maybe like a date with your wife. When in Rome. You familiar with that one?
I have heard of it, but I've never watched it.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen it either. So I know it's like Josh Duhamel and Kristen Bell, but I've never seen it.
And now, once she hears this episode, she will make me watch that movie.
He also wrote and directed Simon Birch. You remember that movie?
I, once again, have heard of it, never watched it.
Now, actually, I have seen Simon Birch. That's a good one. It's one of those comedy dramas that really, touches the heart nerve.
As they all should.
But that was a good one. It's got Jim Carrey in it in one of his dramatic roles, although he's got a very small part in it. And then, before he did this one, this dude is the writer and director of Daredevil.
Ooh.
The Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Now, I am the proponent. I think I might be, as you are to Daredevil, I am to Ghost Rider. Where everybody else thinks, oh, that's a bad movie. I'm like, I actually kind of like it.
Yeah, I do like that. I will stand by though. I like the director's cut of Daredevil better.
Now, I actually haven't seen
Like,
the director's cut.
yeah, the theatrical cut I can kind of agree with people. It's not great. I think the theatrical cut just adds enough. And then again, I'm biased because Daredevil was my like first comic, and I've just got this connection to Daredevil in that way. But they did you know they filmed this movie in Melbourne, Australia?
Mm-mm, I did not.
Yeah, supposed to be Texas,
Hmm.
but they filmed it in Melbourne, Australia. And anyone who knows anything about Melbourne, Australia, knows that it was in Melbourne because the bridge that he rides up
Oh, is that the one that he rides up and then he stops and jumps in the water?
and then jumps in the water. Yeah. That is the South Bank pedestrian footbridge, which is like an
Oh.
iconic landmark in Melbourne.
Hmm.
Like you look up Google images of Melbourne, you will see that
I
bridge.
guess they were hoping nobody in America would probably know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think they just went, that's just a cool bridge. Like we can't not
Yeah.
have Ghost Rider ride up
Well,
it.
everything's bigger in Texas, and in Australia, all the bugs are bigger, so close enough.
But this movie was released February 16th. I don't know what it is about comic book movies and Valentine's Day weekend, but February 16th, 2007. Now, this was. Okay, so first off, this was 1 year before MCU took off
Hmm.
because Iron Man came out in May of the next year.
Which, if you show this movie to somebody, they'd probably say it was 5 or 10 years earlier than that.
Yeah. Chad and I have talked about, I forgot what movie, but we talked about another movie that came out right before um, right before Iron Man came out, and we were like, yeah, you would think it was years before, but no, this movie came out almost a year and a couple of months before Iron Man. To give some other perspective, in 2000, what other comic book movies came out in 2007? X-Men: The Last Stand
Mm.
and Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Ooh. So,
Yeah.
0 for 3 that year.
Yeah. Did you see this in theaters?
I did. I saw this in the glorious theater of Statesboro, Georgia. This would have
Mugs
been
and Movies?
I think this would have been my junior year at Georgia Southern.
Did you see it in the Mugs and Movies theater?
Did not. I saw the Flyboys movie, the World War I movie in
Oh yeah,
Mugs.
I remember that one.
Yeah, but yeah, just me and a couple friends went to go see it one night, and we kind of walked away, scratching our head. I think it just kind of
Yeah.
depended on how big of a fan you were of Nick Cage.
Or Ghost Rider. I
Oh yeah.
mean, you could, yeah. So I went and saw it in theaters too. I don't know if this was one. I think I went and saw it maybe with my cousin, but I do know I saw this one in theaters. Um, and I mean, I was excited to see any comic book movie, so I didn't really walk away from it going, "Well, that was crap." But yeah, the more you thought about it, the more I went, "Oh yeah, it's kind of cheesy."
Mm-hmm.
And this one is very cheesy, but we'll get into that more as we break it down. Let's go ahead and get into the characters, and of course, we'll start off with Nicolas Cage. He wasn't playing a character; he was Nicolas.
Pretty much.
Nicolas Cage. Yeah. Yeah, playing Johnny Blaze, the Ghost Rider himself. Ghost Rider first debuted in Marvel Spotlight #5 back in August of 1972, created by Gary Friedrich, Roy Thomas, and Mike Pluge. What did you think of Cage's performance?
I wish he could get rid of the Southern accent. It was so on and off. Uh, I was watching this with Brittany as she was trying not to nap. And I think the first thing she said 5 minutes into it was that his Southern accent was as bad as Brad Pitt's in Inglorious Bastards.
But was it as bad as his Southern accent in Con Air?
Ooh. Now, Con Air's Southern accent, that's a different level right there.
Put the bunny down.
If only he said something similar to that in this movie.
Oh, he says a lot, and it comes and like you said, it does come and go. Like the Southern accent is thicker at some points than it is at other points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know why he had to have a Southern accent, other than the fact that it's set in Texas.
And everybody in Texas
Um,
has a deep on and off again Southern accent.
I get, yeah, but nobody else does. That's
Mm-mm.
the thing about the movie. No one else in this movie has a Southern accent. What's your knowledge of Nicolas Cage when it comes to Ghost Rider? Like, do
Uh,
you know how big of a Ghost Rider fan he is?
I mean, I've always known that he's a huge comic book nerd. That he was what
Oh
up
yeah,
in the running for being Bat or not Batman, Superman,
Superman. He was
and
supposed to be Superman in the Tim Burton movie, and then it got canceled.
mhm. And I've always heard that he's a motorcycle enthusiast, and that kind of geared him toward Ghost Rider. So I'm not entirely sure if that's correct, but
Yeah, he's a huge Ghost Rider fan. In fact, he has a Ghost Rider tattoo.
oh, nice.
They had to cover it up for the his shirtless scenes because it doesn't make any sense for Johnny Blaze to have a Ghost Rider tattoo.
Yeah, that was before
Um,
Meta was being cool.
yeah, huge comic book fan. I mean, he was supposed to play Superman. He named his son Kal El.
Okay.
Like his son is. And did you know that the name Nicolas Cage, like his name's actually Nicholas Coppola.
hmm
He went with the name Cage based off of the Marvel character Luke Cage.
Oh, such a good character too.
Yeah, and that's where he got the name Cage. So yeah, big comic book fan. And he fought when he found out they were making a Ghost Rider movie. I mean, he fought for this role.
You know what
He
they should
wanted to be Ghost Rider.
what they should do is now since no one's probably ever going to put Nick Cage in a Marvel movie again, they just should make him the new Stan Lee. Just have him as cameos.
Okay, so you say that. I'm actually thinking about making a little TikTok video talking about this. I think that Nick Cage should enter the MCU, and I think we should come full circle, and he should play Mephisto.
Ooh, that would be a good one. He's crazy enough to do it.
Yeah, I think he would make a good Mephisto, and that would be perfect. It would still connect him to these Ghost Rider movies, but you can still say these Ghost Rider movies never existed, you know,
And I
as far as
think
the MCU is concerned.
and the fans would freak out enough to be, oh my gosh, he was Ghost Rider and now he's Mephisto.
Yeah, but it works. I mean, because talking talking about this, let's talk about his age. So Nick Cage was 43
Gosh.
at the time of this
I would
movie.
have thought he would have been in his late 30s.
No, he was 40. I mean, I'm sure the character. How old do you think the character's supposed to
Ooh.
be?
The Nick Cage character? That Johnny
Yeah,
Blaze?
Johnny Blaze.
Probably, knowing movies, probably late 20s.
Because this is a point I was going to bring up when we talked about Eva Mendes, but let's go ahead and talk about Eva Mendes while we're talking about this.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the movie, you've got Johnny and Roxanne, and they look to be roughly the same age.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, they're
The
younger.
younger version?
They're
Yeah.
the younger counterparts.
Yeah. So they're probably what, 17, 18?
Probably supposed to be.
Okay. So then we flash forward, and now you've got Nick Cage, who, like I said, is 43. They do try to make him look younger by giving him. I swear that had to have been some sort of hairpiece that he was wearing.
Yeah, he did
Um,
look fake as soon as the camera changed to him.
those abs were definitely fake. That was definitely some
Absolutely.
CGI or some prosthetic or something, because
Mm-hmm.
those abs did not look real. And then you got Eva Mendes, who in real life is 10 years younger. So she
Oh
was
gosh.
33 at the time of this movie.
Yeah, I would have.
So
Yeah, I would have thought she was actually a little older than that.
no, I mean they are 10 years apart
Mm.
in real life, and yet we're supposed to believe that they're roughly the same age in this movie. But yeah, let's continue talking about Eva Mendes. So she plays Roxanne Simpson, who also appeared in that first issue along with Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider. Her character's a little different. We'll get into that a little bit more in the movie panel section. But I do have a question to ask you.
Okay.
Why was it a character choice for Roxanne to just carry a magic 8 ball around in her purse?
I honestly do not know. I thought it was a pretty funny gag. when she pulled it out and shook it. I really kind of wanted to know what it said, though.
It was just so goofy, though.
Yeah, I mean, it really, like you said, this movie really does turn up the campiness in some scenes. One scene is trying to be hardcore punk. I was telling Brittany when we were watching this, I would get Supernatural vibes, like the show Supernatural.
Oh, I
And
actually have that somewhere in my notes later. Yeah.
and then the very next scene, it'd be, I felt like I was watching an old James Bond, or Adam West Batman type scene, with just so campy.
Yeah, but yeah. And I just the jokes with Eva Mendes, again the Magic 8 Ball, the fact that she asked the waiter like, "Do you think I'm pretty?" and he goes, "Eh." I'm like, "What? What? No." Like Eva Mendes is attractive. No guy is gonna look at her and go, "Eh." So even the way that she responds when Johnny decides to tell her, I sold my soul, all that jazz, and the
Hmm.
way she responds, I'm like, that is
Yeah,
not how a human being would respond to
no
this.
normal person would be I need to take you to a psychiatric wing, or
Yeah.
B, I'm just going to leave you. You can't tell me the truth.
Yeah, she would get more upset than that,
Oh
I
yeah.
would think. And then of course, when she sees him riding up the wall, and I love how it's supposed to be she immediately knows it's him. I
Hmm. She
again didn't
finally
quite
puts two and
understand
two
that.
together.
And then she ends up down there. Okay, so this is just talking about a scene here. And then she ends up there. She makes eye contact with the cop, who doesn't say a word to the fact that she's in the middle of a
Bad
police
police
scene.
work.
Yeah. Then when Ghost Rider is standing in front of all of them, she's walking towards him, and then they start to open fire, and I'm like, wait, y'all are all behind this lady, and y'all are just gonna open fire. Like, we're not worried about an innocent bystander in the way. You're just gonna
Absolutely
open
not.
fire.
That's Texas cops for you, apparently. What got me was when he sees her, the whole flames dying down, but his flames go from yellow, orange, red to blue, which actually burns hotter. Yet the
Yeah.
movie
Well,
makes it
that blue
seem,
thing. So we're not going to talk about this because this is another movie, but that blue thing comes back in the sequel, and
which
actually there's
I've been lucky
there's more
not
of
to see.
a there's more of a reason behind the blue flame.
Your March Madness
Um,
bracket made me not want to watch it, so
our worst movie,
yes.
that one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's going to be a fun one. I'll be doing that one with Blake, and we haven't recorded that one yet. And so I think when I sit down to watch that sequel, I think it will only be the third time I've ever seen the movie,
Oh gosh.
which might be a lot for most people. Um, Another question I wanted to ask about Roxanne: how believable was she as a reporter?
Terrible.
Yes,
Absolutely
she is a
terrible. And that's
horrible
her first
reporter.
scene too.
Yeah, because first off, that first scene when she says, I think like her first line is, not even for an old friend. I'm going, there is no way they heard her say that.
Mm.
Like, there's first off, you see how far away she is from
She
them.
has to be 20 yards and she's using a very calm voice.
Yeah, and then there's all these people around him just yelling at him and all trying to get the interview. So I'm like, there's no way, no way. But yeah, then when she's interviewing him, the fact that she doesn't do anything to try and fill in the awkwardness, and then she looks over at her producer,
Yeah.
like, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, you're a professional reporter, like you should know what to do.
Yeah, I felt they just
So
went too hard on it being, hey, this is supposed to be awkward. It's old flings, seeing each other again for the first time in a long time. But the awkwardness of the scene just kind of overpowered that to just make it
every
seem like
scene with them was
bad.
awkward.
Oh,
Every scene with them was
absolutely.
awkward. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the villain, Blackheart, who when he's introduced just yells at the camera for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I
Just
get angry at
does
cameras.
just does a little jump scare to absolutely no one except the audience, which makes no sense logically. But here he is, played by Wes Bentley, who is very picky about his role. So I'd love to hear an interview as to why he picked this role.
Mhm.
But the character of Blackheart first debuted in Daredevil number 270 in
Mm.
September of 1989. He was created by Ann Nocente and John Romita Jr. But he looks nothing like the character because the character in the comics is like this creature, like he's like
Hmm.
this shadow monster. Whereas here's where I put my little supernatural note. Whereas Wes Bentley looks like a villain from Buffy or Supernatural.
Brittany, when we were watching this, she said that he reminded her of the Johnny Depp vampire. I can't
Oh,
remember.
the Dark
The Dark
Shadows.
Shadows, yes.
I can see that. I can see that. But yeah, very, very odd role. Or I don't know if it's so much the character or if it was Wes Bentley's portrayal,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a very odd villain.
Yeah, it doesn't give really any reason other than he wants the contract. There's really no
Mhm.
backstory of, other. I just assumed, okay, you get the contract and the souls, he'll be more powerful than Mephisto.
Yeah, which made no sense
Hmm.
if you ask me. Like that made absolutely no sense as to how getting that contract and then absorbing the souls
Hmm.
makes you more powerful, which clearly didn't work. It made him
Hmm.
actually weaker.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't get this character at all. And it didn't help that he's followed by three villains that are just nobodies.
Oh yeah. They all get one hit KO'd.
Pretty much, yeah. So you got, I don't even remember their names, to be honest. I didn't look it up or write it
Earth,
down.
Wind, and
But you,
Fire.
yeah, it was Earth. Well, no, it was
Earth,
Earth,
Wind, and
Wind, and
Water.
Water. Yeah. So you got the Earth guy who he takes out almost immediately, like
Hmm.
no fight
Well,
whatsoever.
and the Earth guy didn't even use his powers. He used a dump
That's what I'm
truck.
saying. Yeah, no fight whatsoever. But I had heard that there was an issue that they were told because this was Sony, who also had Spider-Man,
Hmm.
and they were in the process of making Spider-Man 3 and were going to use the Sandman.
Okay.
And the what I read, don't know how much truth there is to it, but what I read was they told the filmmakers for Ghost Rider, "Hey, we see you're using a Earth villain. We don't want to confuse people with Sandman that we're about to use." And so that's why he doesn't really use his power
Hmm.
and why he's taken out so
I
quickly.
mean, they could have just made him kind of like the Earthbenders in Avatar, just pull stuff out of the ground, or
Yeah.
the I can't think of his name, but the guy with the Earth ring from Captain Planet.
Oh yeah, yeah, Kwame.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely get a little bit of Captain Planet vibes off of these three, because they control.
Yep.
And
Hell.
then I guess Blackheart is supposed to control what, like ice, because he
Yeah.
freezes a few things, or they make it look, they make you where you see their breath. But then Mephisto's the same way, and that was confusing.
Yeah. So is every demon supposed to have that power?
Yeah, I don't know. Then you got the Wind dude who looks like a reject from a Matrix movie.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a fight there, but he, you can't touch the wind, so I create a fire tornado, and then you've got the water dude, which I have this further in my notes, but I'm gonna go ahead and scan. I literally have a section just about the water fight. So,
That's
so, so
if you call that a
the
fight.
water, yeah, the water fight. First off, as soon as we go to that moment where Johnny is riding his motorcycle in
In the
this,
marsh.
not not just that, but this completely fake looking marsh.
Mm.
Like you're clearly now on a set, on a soundstage. Like it looks so out of place from the rest of the movie.
Well, and he went from what, probably a foot of water to all of a sudden he's
Yeah.
drowning.
Yeah, so when the dude pulls him off the bike, he takes him straight down and it's like he's in this lake. Now, part of me goes, okay, well, they showed earlier that Ghost Rider can ride over the water, right on top of water. So can Johnny do that even when he's not Ghost Rider? Like, yeah, it was very confusing because it looks like he's just able to ride, like you're saying, it's only a few inches of water, but then he gets pulled under, and it's this deep lake that he's getting pulled under. And then apparently the bike kept going
Mm-hmm.
because then when he comes out, the bike is on the shore.
Yeah. Well, the bike is basically a horse, so
Takes all of them out, and then you're just completely useless villains. And I really didn't get the villains.
no.
I did read that they were supposed to use, talking about another kind of confusion. There is a character in Marvel called the Scarecrow,
Mm-hmm.
and I had heard they were supposed to use him as the villain for Ghost Rider, but then they thought there would be too much confusion because DC's Batman
True.
character
Yeah.
Scarecrow, which they are very similar. I'm gonna mention that both DC and Marvel's Scarecrow are very similar, but they were worried about that would be too confusing. Although he did pop up in the Ghost Rider video game that came out in conjunction with this movie.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was something you ever played. I did not.
I have not played it.
Yeah, it was a PlayStation 2 game, just to date it there. But yeah, okay, moving on. Another character I want to actually dive a little bit into, and that is Carter Slade, played by the great Sam Elliott,
Mm-hmm.
who amazingly would have this movie and Hulk. Like he played Thunderbolt Ross in Hulk.
Yeah, I'm just kind of
So
wondering who's Sam Elliott's agent because all of a sudden he takes up a whole lot of Marvel movies. And every time
yeah,
I just see or hear Sam Elliott, I just think Western movies. He's a
well,
modern
but
day,
yeah,
John Wayne.
yeah, and it worked for this one though. I do think
Absolutely.
it worked. So he is playing Carter Slade, which is from the comics. So this is why I want to talk about him a little bit because I don't know if you are aware of this. So Carter Slade is the first person to have the name Ghost Rider, and it was a comic book called Ghost Rider back in 1967, created by Ray Crank and Dick Ayers. Um, it spawned off of a Tim Holt comic, which Tim Holt was a famous cowboy from like the 40s. And originally though his name was Rex Fury. That was Ghost Rider's name,
Hmm.
was Rex Fury. Once he got like his own comic, it became Carter Slade. So this was also Dick Ayers, but this time he's working with Gary Friedrich and Roy Thomas, which, if you remember, were the guys who created Johnny Blaze Ghost
Mm-hmm.
Rider. Carter Slade's Ghost Rider was a dude in all white who rode a white horse. So it was kind of like the Phantom. You remember the
Okay.
Phantom, the Billy Zane movie
Yeah,
is
the
also
purple
based on an old
suit with
comic.
the ring.
Yeah. It was somebody that they thought his backstory is a little confusing. They thought he was dead, but then when he came back, he decided it's also like the
Kind of like
spirit.
the Lone Ranger too, a little
Yeah,
bit.
kind of like the Lone Ranger as well. But yeah, he wears all white, which he does something to the costume so it glows in the dark.
Very Scooby
Um,
Dooish.
yeah. But he was called the Ghost Rider. He had no powers like Ghost Rider. Of course, there wasn't the flaming skull like Ghost Rider. But he was called the Ghost Rider. Then when Marvel decided to make Ghost Rider, when they brought the Carter Slade character back into comics, they had to rename him. And this is a fun story, and you being a history person might enjoy this. So again, let me explain Carter Slade. He wore all white riding a horse.
Mm-hmm.
The first name they decided to give him when they renamed him was the Knight Rider. Now, do you know why that was very problematic? This is the 70s.
Yep. There's gonna be the civil rights era going on right
Yep.
here.
And who else were known as the Knight Riders?
That's gonna be the KKK.
Yeah. So Little problematic. Apparently, whoever at Marvel did not know that
Yeah. That's
connection,
why you
and
need to
so
know your history, kids.
yeah, so his name was changed very quickly, and he is now known as the Phantom Rider.
Hmm.
And so he still pops up every now and then in comics, but he is now the Phantom Rider. But it is still Carter Slade, and I kind of like that they took that character and just went ahead and said he was a Ghost Rider.
Mm-hmm.
I
It,
liked it.
yeah, it seemed like somebody actually read the comics in that sense. It seemed to me what they really struggled with was making a movie out of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then also he's playing a character that is kind of like the caretaker, who a couple of different people use the name caretaker in the comics, the Ghost Rider comics. The first one was in Ghost Rider 28 in August of 1992. So he was created by Howard Mackey and Andy Kubert, and he's just a regular dude that just maintains the cemetery in Brooklyn that Ghost Rider frequents, and he just becomes a go-to person for Ghost Rider.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of merged those characters together. But I was totally fine with it until they actually do. I mean, it wasn't a shocking revolution to find out he was actually the Ghost Rider from the
Kind
legend foretells.
Yeah,
Yeah,
always a good intro when you have those. The narrator, and as you said, legend
yeah,
says.
yeah. My only problem with it is they do that whole intro, and then they just proceed to tell that story like three more times
Mm.
in the movie.
Yeah, in case you weren't listening the first time.
But when they do the reveal and he turns into Ghost Rider, and then they write off cool little visual.
Mm-hmm.
Even you get
The riders in the
the it's
storm in the background too.
yeah, the Riders in the Sky, yeah,
Yeah,
Riders in the
yeah.
Sky music playing in the background, just awesome. And then they get there, he turns back and he says, "I could only change one more time, and I was saving it for this." Saving it for
You
what?
did nothing.
Like you rode your bike, or you rode your horse alongside Blaze in his bike. That is all
Yeah.
you did.
I could
So that
understand if he said, oh, you're not going to know the way. I have to show you where it is.
but the fact that he also says, I can only turn one more time. I'm like, does that mean that there's a limit to how many times that they can turn into Ghost Rider? And do they know that limit? Because he knew that they could do it one more time.
It makes me wonder if just because he hadn't been the Ghost Rider in so long, maybe but just because he's so old that he knows, hey, the physical strain on the body. Kind of going back to Nick Cage, the first time he changes into Ghost Rider, it's excruciating pain.
Yeah.
About a 5 minute segment of terrible CGI going on.
Yeah, for 2007, though,
It
CGI
actually
wasn't
wasn't
bad.
that bad,
Yeah.
but
But yeah,
that's kind
so
of my
that was the
thought.
thing with Carter Slade. Does this mean the Ghost Rider is immortal?
I mean, it seemed to make you think that way, but then when Johnny Blaze asked Mephisto about it, it kind of alluded to Mephisto had been keeping him alive.
Yeah, but then that wouldn't make any sense for Carter Slade
Hmm.
because he rode away from,
Yeah, and it would make sense
but yet
for
he
a
doesn't.
sequel.
Yeah, he doesn't age for 150 years.
So
I don't know. It's very
I don't know.
confusing. But
Maybe when he leaves Mephisto, he still has the powers, but just not as much.
I don't know. Again, it was just another. Like you said, they just weren't really thinking as they were
Oh
writing
no.
this movie.
Well, and I don't know if you got this in your notes, but I'd read that there had been a lot of, or at least one or two rewrites of the
Oh, there's
script.
always a lot of rewrites. I always come across how many different rewrites there were in these movies when we do them. but yeah, but still, I mean, I don't care about rewrites as long as the one you decide to go
It's
with
actually
actually
good.
makes sense.
Hmm.
So, all right, well, let's finish up and talk about Mephisto in an obvious Easy Rider reference played by Peter Fonda. I mean, nothing better than getting the character, the actor famously known for playing a biker, you know, and I don't know how familiar you are with the movie Easy Rider.
I mean, I watched it years ago with my dad. I don't think I really understood the cultural impact of it back then.
Well, so did you know what Peter Fonda's character's name was?
I do not remember.
So, well, I mean, his name was Wyatt, but he went by Captain America. So I find that funny as well. So Peter Fonda plays a character named Captain America, riding a motorcycle, and then now here he is playing Mephisto in a movie about a
Hmm.
character that rides a motorcycle. But Mephisto first debuted in Silver Surfer #3 in December of 1968, so before Ghost Rider. So that tracks a little bit, but we'll talk about a little bit more. He was created by the late great Stan Lee and John Buscema. Now, do you know what Mephisto looks like in the comics?
I mean, I would assume just what most people think the devil looks like.
Yeah, he's the stereotypical Red Devil.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
this
he's
this is where for all those people that were watching Scarlet Witch and wanting Mephisto, this is where you go find him.
yeah. I think all those people didn't realize there's already been a Mephisto.
Hmm.
It was Peter Fonda. How creepy was he when he first walks up on Johnny as a teenager and goes, "I really like the way you ride. Which I would love for you to ride for me sometime."
that's about two different levels and two different types of scary right there.
Yeah,
Especially if you're
yeah,
going to say it the way you said it.
yeah,
But I actually
yeah.
like the scene where he's kind of walking around Johnny as he's working on the bent or on the bike, and he kind of comes around that curtain and the lightning flashes, and you see kind of like that hunched jackal shadow.
Okay, so you brought that up. You described it. The flash happens outside the tent.
Mhm.
So how does a shadow get put onto the wall if the flash is happening on the other side of the
That's
wall?
movie magic right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Whatever it is.
I told you these people they knew the comics, they just didn't know how to make a movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much talked about all the characters. So here's the question that I always ask. So of these characters, or any of the characters we may not have mentioned, who do you want to see again, and who do you wish would receive a penance stare?
Can I have two people I want to see again?
You can say whatever you want.
Awesome. I would absolutely have to go with more Sam Elliott. I
Oh, wouldn't we
wish.
always?
God, I wish. I mean, that's who I modeled my mustache after. But I really wanted more backstory, more just him talking to Nick Cage, more Mephisto would have been nice. Kind of more just reasoning of why, and just the kind of I would have just liked to seen him kind of just loitering and torturing, Johnny Blaze's soul, just to kind of
Hmm.
be like, hey, I'm holding this over you,
Hmm.
type deal. Yeah, those would have been my two.
I would have loved to have seen a scene between Mephisto and Carter Slade,
That would have been good.
between Peter Fonda and Sam Elliott. Just another kind of just acknowledgement of the backstory that they did give. But okay, so who would you wish would receive a penance stare?
Uh, I might hurt some feelings, and I might have some people yelling in their cars when they hear this. I'm gonna have to go with Nick Cage.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Why come?
just the inconsistency of his acting. Like you said, it was Nick Cage being Nick Cage. He wasn't trying to create a new character. One scene he had his southern boy country accent, and the next scene he didn't. And I just felt like he was just trying too hard to be weird. I want to watch the monkey documentary. I got jelly beans in a martini jar. It
Mm.
just seemed a little too much to me. Like he could have dialed it down a bit.
Asking Nicolas Cage to dial it down.
Or I could have gone with Mac. Mac seemed a little pointless to me. I kind of wish he was more of a Luis character, comedic relief. But when you have Nick Cage doing that for you,
Yeah, Donald Logue's character was literally there just to be set up so he could be killed later
hmm
in a
and
in a shocking
and
moment.
Nick Cage doesn't really care at all.
Nah.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.
All right, so let's get into the moving panels. We've talked about some of this already. And I know I asked you if you were familiar with Ghost Rider. Are you familiar with the origin story, like the Johnny Blaze origin story of how he became Ghost Rider?
Not really. The most I remember about Ghost Rider, other than the cartoon and this movie, is the Ghost Rider from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I know that's a completely
Yeah, that's completely
different.
different. Yeah, it's Robbie Reyes. So they were pretty close to the comic. There were some differences, so let's talk about that. So in the comic, Johnny's dad dies. I'm pretty sure if I remember right, and I was just reading these comics again in the last couple of weeks. His dad is killed in a motorcycle accident, and then he is kind of adopted by the Simpsons.
Like
It always sounds funny when you say the Simpsons.
Yeah.
But if you remember, that's Roxanne's last name is Simpson.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's Roxanne's parents because they were the ones who ran the show that Johnny and his dad were performing in.
Okay. Which definitely wasn't.
And so that's what they did. And so if you think about it, not if you think about it, this is the way it is in the comics. Roxanne is like his I don't know if you wouldn't say stepsister because it's not either one of his parents, but it's like his sister through adoption.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they, fall in love with each other. So like a little weird.
Yeah.
But I was okay with them skipping over that part, just because it gets the origin story going a little quicker. You don't need all that fine detail. So I was okay with that. I was okay with him not having already that relationship with Roxanne and just being they were boyfriend and girlfriend. But the thing is, in the comics, once he becomes Ghost Rider, Roxanne finds out like immediately.
Oh. Doesn't happen.
Like there's no, yeah, like she finds out pretty much immediately. And then those first comics, back in the 70s, almost every issue deals with Roxanne getting kidnapped by the villain, and then Johnny has to go save her.
Being the damsel in distress.
Yeah. I mean, but they even do this thing in the comic where Roxanne is the reason why the devil, and I'll talk a little bit more. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. So in the first series with Johnny Blaze, they flat out say it's Satan that gives them the powers. And then there's all the Satan worshipers that are trying to track down Johnny, once he turns against Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it's because of how strong Roxanne's love is for Johnny that Satan can't get Johnny's soul because her love is too powerful. So that's where they do all that, and then later they retconned it so that it was actually Mephisto posing as Satan,
Okay.
and and they, that was to get away from the, I guess you'd say religious aspect of it as best they could, and get away from the whole Satan worshiper stuff, which again these comics in the 70s definitely played on. As a Christian, it's been a little awkward reading those early comics. I mean, I get comics and I'm fine with comics, and I get that comics kind of teeter a line with a lot of that, but those first ones are just straight up talking about Satan worshipers, and it gets a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I always feel the older comics, 60s, 70s, 80s, those comics just almost like felt like they could get away with anything.
Well, and then there was even some comic part of that first run in the 70s where there's a witch doctor that Ghost Rider has to go up against, and the fact that they call them Indians, and even the Native Americans refer to themselves as Indians. I'm like, oh, this is good old 70s. There, but before people knew better.
Reminds me of the old Disney Peter Pan cartoon and movie.
Oh yeah, that's another one. But again, like I said, she knows immediately about Ghost Rider in the comics. I do have a question though about the way they play this out. So after everything happens in the opening in the background, scene, why does he ride his bike to where she's standing under the tree just to stare at her and then drive off?
That was very weird. It's like
if
I can understand it was the whole, they were supposed to meet and they were going to run away. Like, I could understand if they maybe had a talk or an argument.
Yeah.
But he just, like you said, he just stares at her for a solid 10, 15 seconds, and she does nothing, just kind of like everybody else watching the movies, like, what are you doing, dude? And then he just rides off.
Yeah, I don't get why he went there. Because like you said, I mean, at least be the jerk who you go to her, but then you say you can't go.
Yeah, I mean, he's the Ghost Rider. Let him ghost her.
Yeah, or just don't show up there at all. Yeah, just flat out ghost her. I don't know about that. But going back to the comics, so again, he's adopted by the Simpsons. Mona Simpson, his adopted mother, she is killed when Johnny crashes his bike, and then she gets too close to the bike explodes. That kills her, so now his adopted mother is dead. Then it's actually his adopted father, Crash Simpson, because he was also a motorcycle guy. But it was Crash Simpson. He's the one that gets cancer. So it's not the dad, it's his adopted dad in the comic. Then there's also a little bit of change. In the comic, Johnny deliberately calls upon Satan. Like I know they have in the movie where he studies those books, but they make it more so in the movie that he's studying the books because he's trying to learn more about his powers. But in the movie, in the comic, he gets books and he actually does a ritual to call upon Satan and then ask Satan to heal his father from the cancer, or his adopted father, which does happen, but just the same way as everything else. He heals him, but then he ends up dying in a motorcycle accident. But here was my other big issue, and I want to talk about this. In the comic, like I said, he deliberately calls upon Satan. So then when Satan says, you'll have to sign a contract and sell your soul, Johnny, willingly signs the contract. In the movie, he accidentally pricks his finger, and the devil accepts that as the contract.
He gets tricked. He's just kind of looking at the paper, all confused, and as he's trying to open up the scroll a little more, it gets pricked.
Yeah, and then that's just acceptable.
Yeah.
Like, how does that work? Like, he didn't agree to it. He never agreed to it.
Devil's in the details.
But again, he never agreed to it. A drop of his blood just happened to fall on the contract. And Mephisto was like, that'll do.
Yep. Got to get the movie going.
But he, again, becomes Ghost Rider, or sells his soul. Again, he becomes Ghost Rider immediately in the comics. I don't know why Mephisto would make him the Rider and then go, I'm not going to need you for another 15 years.
Yeah, insert the SpongeBob narrator 20 years later.
Yeah. But the thing about the only turning into Ghost Rider at night, that was a part of Johnny Blaze's version of Ghost Rider. However, the whole at night thing seemed to be inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, even when he's talking to Roxanne and telling her the whole story, he's like, well, it only happens at night, like it is now.
Yeah. But it's but also what it had to be in the presence of evil.
Yeah, I guess that as well. But then, like, when he's fighting Blackheart at the end, shadows are okay.
Yeah, I guess.
Like, the sun can be out, but as long as you're standing in a shadow, you can still be Ghost Rider.
Shadows are nighttime?
Yeah.
It's nighttime in the daytime?
But I had talked about earlier about Danny Ketch, and so we're going to talk about Danny Ketch because the Ghost Rider that this Johnny Blaze turns into is not Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider. In terms of when this movie would have been, started being created. Because Johnny Blaze's Ghost Rider was just Johnny Blaze with the flaming skull head. Like, he still had Johnny's consciousness. He still spoke like Johnny.
Yeah, this one's almost completely different. As soon as he turns into Ghost Rider, it's like, is any part of Johnny Blaze in there?
Which is Danny Ketch. That's Danny Ketch's Ghost Rider. I mean, even the look, the leather jacket with the spikes, the chain, the fact that the motorcycle actually transforms, even that little kind of face shield that's on the front of it, that's straight from Danny Ketch's Hell Cycle.
So then what does Johnny Blaze drive in the comics?
He drives a motorcycle, but it's just a motorcycle. Like, there's nothing special about it. It's just a motorcycle. It's Danny who actually has the ability, I want to say in the first, if not second issue after Danny becomes Ghost Rider, he rides it up a wall. And then it's only a few issues in that he rides it across water. So, and then again, the flames being the wheels, like, that's all Danny Ketch. Now Danny Ketch, the way he turns into Ghost Rider is by touching a symbol that is on the gas tank. So part of me kind of want to go, well, they did a little nod to that by he touches the gas tank, and that's how he transforms the bike. Yeah. So a little nod there. But yeah, this was not the Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider. This was the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider, who was Ghost Rider kind of at the time, but Blaze had returned by this point. But yeah. And then you got the penance stare, where he makes the person relive and feel the pain of all their victims. That again was a Danny Ketch thing. Danny Ketch first used it in only the 4th issue after he turned into Ghost Rider, which was back in August of 1990. And then Johnny doesn't use it until 2006, December of 2006. This movie came out in February of 2007. So I have to feel like they found out that they were going to have Johnny use the penance stare, and Marvel just wanted to make sure they beat them to the punch and had Johnny use it in the comics right before this movie.
Absolutely, yeah.
But even when Johnny uses it, and just for the record, he uses it on Doctor Strange. That's the first time Johnny uses it. Yeah. I won't get into the storyline as to why he does and all, but when he goes to use it in the issue that Johnny uses it, he even says, I saw the kid, Danny, do this, and that's where he learns how to do the penance stare from Danny Ketch using the penance stare. But here's my question about the penance stare. Does it kill? Because when he does it to the mugger that was mugging Rebel Wilson in like her first
Can I go back and add her to my I need more of?
I gotta say, I remember when this movie was being previewed, and of course we didn't know who Rebel Wilson was, but when this movie was being previewed and just the quick shot of her being interviewed and doing his head was on fire, like, yeah, whatever sound she makes, like that's one of the best parts of this movie. But did he kill that mugger?
I mean, it seems like he does.
Yeah, because in the comic, the penance stare doesn't. I think it has killed if it's strong enough, but usually the penance stare is just to inflict pain and to torture the person so that they will not commit crime anymore. Because they'll now know what it what they have that feeling in them. So that was just a question I had. Because, yeah, like you said, it seems to. I mean, he only does it twice. He does it to the mugger, and then he does it at the end of Blackheart.
Yeah, because especially how the eyes just kind of seem like they're molten, and then it's like the life is just sucked out of their face, and then they all just fall over, and you never see them again.
Because, like I said, I know when Danny Ketch does it, again, that it's usually just something that makes the villain just run away in terror. I know when Johnny Blaze used it, like I said, I know when that first time when he used it on Doctor Strange, he actually put Doctor Strange into almost like a coma that he was later, revived from. But yeah, so that was my thing. The other thing is the can't die. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but the whole he can't die. When he was young and he has the motorcycle crash, and then Mephisto says, I can't have you dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then they make him believe that he prevented him from dying in all of those motorcycle crashes throughout his life. That's not a thing from the comics. I mean, all three of the main Ghost Riders, Johnny Blaze, Danny Ketch, and even Robbie Reyes, there are all moments in their respective comics in which they worry about dying when they're human. I know there's even a part of the original run with Johnny Blaze where he does get injured, like breaks some bones. He gets into a motorcycle accident, breaks some bones. When he turns into Ghost Rider, he's fine. But they talk about how when he turns back into Johnny, he's going to be injured again. So clearly that, and then I know in Robbie Reyes's, there's a part, and we'll talk more about this when we're talking about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but there's a part where the spirit, because he actually talks to the spirit that's inside of him, where the spirit tells him, hey, if you get shot and die, I'm not going to do anything about it. So clearly they can die. So I don't get the whole that they can't die thing.
For me, it really seemed like when Nick Cage is trying to, do all these outlandish stunts, especially when he's going to do the football field, field goal to field goal, and then he's going to do the choppers on top of that, with the propellers going. The first thing I thought was, well, he's probably trying to see if he can die. I made a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
But then it went with, oh, my dad thought this was a fun idea.
Yeah, but at the same time, he does kind of say that because there's a part where he says he wants to know whether it's him or if it's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he does say that. My thing about the wanting to die and trying to get away with it, they've done that so much with the Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Where Bruce Banner is trying to rid himself of the Hulk and realizes he can't kill himself because the Hulk won't allow it. So I don't know if adding that, but I will say this, that first crash after we've jumped forward, when the helmet hits the wheel, when he flips off the bike, the helmet. So I tried to find something that gave me a legitimate response, but I read that apparently that stunt, when the stunt man landed, he was supposed to crash, but the helmet the wheel hitting his helmet and shattering the visor was not planned.
Ooh.
And when after he landed, they ran to check on him. And apparently he did break some stuff, break some bones. They went to check on him. The stuntman's response was, "Did you get the shot?"
That stuntman needs to get paid more.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, that was another that scene, that crash. I just cringe every time I see it.
And my thing is, why would you wait until you're older? Why wait until the Nick Cage, Johnny Blaze to be testing if you can die? Why wouldn't he?
Because they had
doing
to
that when he's a kid.
Yeah, they had to jump to all those years to get to 43-year-old Nick Cage.
Oh yeah, 17 to 43.
And I guess also you're supposed to believe he had to build up to it to where now he's famous enough that he can afford that type of stuff. And
true.
My thing was when they talked about jumping the football field from goalpost to goalpost, I actually rewound it and I looked back at the first jump when he jumps over all of the semis, and I tried to count. I was like, I'm somewhere around 18 semis. Are you telling me, I didn't look up the dimensions or anything. Are you telling me that 18 semis sitting side by side is not as long as a football field?
I would figure it'd be close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're the math teacher, not me.
Yeah, but like I said, I didn't look up the dimensions, so I just was looking at it going, that looks like a really far jump with 18. Like I said, I tried to count. And I think I counted 18. I'm pretty sure there were 18. If not, it was somewhere close, maybe 16, maybe more. But then when they talk about the football field and they're all looking, I'm going, to me, 18 semis sitting side by side would be a football field at least. So I didn't get that, but
yeah.
But let's go ahead and move on. We're getting to that point where we're just kind of nitpicking. So let's get into it. Final decisions. Bag it, stack it, or trade it. So what say you, Justin?
I am gonna probably upset some people. I'm gonna say stack it.
Okay.
To me, it's a fun movie. Whether you want to nitpick it and basically Mystery Science Theater 3000, just sit there and make fun. It's fun to see Nick Cage just do all his crazy antics and just, Eva Mendes kind of going in and out of her accent as well and just the awkwardness between them. But then, there's parts that are just really awesome. The CGI has, stayed pretty relative. It didn't look bad. When Nick Cage and Sam Elliott are riding together in their Ghost Rider forms, I kind of had goosebumps on my arm, especially with, the doors in the background, Riders in the Sky. And then, you had the Carpenters playing. The soundtrack is really good to this movie. If somebody asked me, hey, do you want to watch Ghost Rider? I'm going to say yes. Probably am not going to watch it on my own. I probably haven't seen this movie probably since I watched it in theaters. Maybe once.
Oh, okay.
Once since then. But I enjoyed it. It's not good, but it's not bad to me.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm right there with you. I said stack it, and most of my bullet points are the exact same as yours. It's a fun movie. It really is. The Ghost Rider stuff is awesome. Every time he is Ghost Rider, I love the scenes from beginning to end when he is Ghost Rider. Yes, it's goofy. It's campy. Even a couple of the Ghost Rider parts. The wagging his finger at the cop that, and and then when he lassos the helicopter, he actually goes yeehaw. Okay, that's a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
That took me out of it a little bit. Uh, we've talked about Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage, but I personally think that for this movie, and again, we'll talk about Spirit of Vengeance in a couple of weeks, but talking about this movie, Nick Cage is actually a little subdued. Like, it's almost like he's holding back a little bit and not being as crazy Nick Cage. And to me, I actually think we needed him to be a little crazier.
True.
Um, you talked about earlier the transformation scene. Like, to me, that's Nick Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when he's turning and he does the laugh while he's
Oh yeah, I mean
yeah
that in the trailer and seeing it again gives me. I mean, if that doesn't either get you excited or creep you out.
yeah
And then I was laughing the shirtless mirror scene when he
yeah
was trying to
turn
spoof
figure out how to
himself
turn
into
himself.
it.
Yeah, he turns yeah like that. That's Nick Cage. That's the Nick Cage stuff I wanted to see. And like I said, we'll talk about Spirit of Vengeance. I know he's a little bit more cagey in Spirit of Vengeance, but in terms of this movie, it's fun. And like I totally agree with what you said. If someone were to say, "Hey, I've never seen Ghost Rider," I'm like, "Well, let's watch it." You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say I wouldn't watch it by myself because I honestly think while I was doing my research and all that, I'm going, I watched this movie not that long ago. Like, I couldn't remember exactly when, but I was like, I did. Like, I think one day I just went, I want to watch Ghost Rider. And
And I'm sure, and I'm not like you. I don't own it on DVD, which I'm sure you do. But I think if it was on a streaming service, like I had to pay money to watch it, and if it
yeah,
was on a streaming service, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, whatever, I feel like I would actually probably watch it, every now and then.
yeah, yeah. I did hate that because yes, I do own I own a DVD copy, not a Blu-ray copy. My DVD was one of those kind of like collector sets. It was a 3 disc, or is because again, I'm holding it and looking at it right now. It's a 3 disc limited edition extended cut. And
Nice.
honestly, I don't know if I could tell you the difference, like what makes it the extended cut. Like, I don't think the scenes that got added were enough to make it any different of a movie. But I also don't know if it's been since I saw it in theaters that I actually saw the theatrical cut. Because since this is the DVD I own, this is the only cut I have seen. Because they don't have both. You know, sometimes they'll put both
Mm-hmm.
theatrical and extended. This is only the extended cut.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what the extended scenes are or how much it affected the movie time. But no, I agree with you. This is one that I really enjoy, just like I talk about with Daredevil. Is it good? No. But it's enjoyable, and that to me that makes it a good movie. Again, it's a stack it. It's not a bag it, it's a stack it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up here. Again, we'll continue on with our March Madness as we center everything in the month of March on one character. And this month we're doing Ghost Rider. Next week, you're going to hear me and Tim Williams from the 80s Flick Flashback podcast talk about the Robbie Reyes version of Ghost Rider that appeared in the 4th season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and you'll get to hear about that Ghost Rider because we've talked about Danny Ketch, we've talked about Johnny Blaze. The only one left is Robbie Reyes, and that's the one we got. Before we end, I just remembered I wanted to do this because I did this with Nicholas in the last episode. We talked about animated and whether or not what are the chances we could see Ghost Rider appear in an animated series again. So I will ask you, with the MCU and them constantly building on the MCU, would you want to see Ghost Rider come again? Do you want it to be Johnny Cage? And how do you want to see it happen?
Ooh. I absolutely would
I said
want
Johnny
to
Cage.
have
I just realized I
it. Johnny
said Johnny
Cage.
Cage. Johnny Blaze. Now, I'm not saying it has to be Nicolas Cage. We can recast. I know there's been talk about Norman Reedus is apparently going to play him.
Hey, you can have
So,
Nick Cage, Johnny Cage, Mortal Kombat. It's totally fine.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, absolutely. I think, and the entire time watching this movie, I was just saying, the movie has the potential.
Yep.
If somebody could take the good parts of this movie, and just, go along with it and, build upon it.
But do they do another Ghost Rider movie, or do they introduce Ghost Rider through, they do a little backdoor introduction of him through another character?
If it was me and I was working at Disney Plus, I would like to see it as a TV show.
Okay.
Flesh it out over, 10, 13 episodes, have it, building him up as a, daredevil, evil Knievel type, get to love the character first. And then, the heart, break of his dad or, adopted dad. And then having to make the deal, put that about episode 2 or 3, have an episode or 2 about learning your powers.
Oh, wow.
And
so
then,
you want a fully fleshed out, origin story.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. See, I think if they're going to bring Ghost Rider in, I think they just introduce him. He already exists. You can kind of do his origin in a flashback or story, but I think you just go ahead and introduce him. And I think, maybe another Doctor Strange movie could be a good spot to introduce him.
That would be good.
They got Blade coming, and there's a lot of connection in the comics between Blade and Ghost Rider. And then there's the whole Midnight Suns and story that they can get into. So I'd love to see it. I don't want Nicolas Cage playing him.
No.
Especially, now that he's, 60.
Well,
don't
you
want
could
Nicolas
have
Cage
him
playing
as an older Ghost Rider. He could be the previous Ghost Rider.
See, I don't want that either. I don't want, as much as I like the Carter Slade part of this movie, I don't want that. I want Johnny Blaze to be, they've done it in the comic books, talked about other Ghost Riders, but I just want it to be Johnny Blaze. Or if they want to just completely ignore Johnny Blaze and jump to Danny Ketch, which, they did with Ant-Man. They went straight to the second Ant-Man and went ahead and did Scott Lang. So I would be fine with that. I'm a little iffy about the Robbie Reyes since they have already done Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And also, I think if you're going to bring Ghost Rider into the MCU, it needs to be the traditional Ghost Rider on the motorcycle.
True.
So it either needs to be Johnny Blaze or Danny Ketch. But yeah. Okay, well, that's where I'm at. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you, Justin, for joining me on this walk through the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right, thanks everybody. Rate and review the show. Let us know what you think. And as always, get the word out there. Let other people know about this wonderful podcast where we talk about comic book movies. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from 3 nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.